Hey, what's going on, everybody? I appreciate y'all for tuning in. I'm Marcus. Here we do attorney reactions to current events and trending news. And we got some topics that we are going to cover today. I'm sorry, I'm looking over at the screen because they added some new feature on this thing I use to stream on, and it's kind of weird. In any event, hey, as always, I'm appreciative for everybody who tune in, who get a chance to watch, who like, share, comment, hit the dislike button. All of it is appreciated. And a big salute to all the channel members out there for the extra support. Hey, shout out to the first comment in the chat. And look at you catching it live. I don't know what's going on. Everybody been telling me they haven't been getting everybody been saying they have not been getting the notifications. So I don't know what that was. I don't know if that's a me thing or a YouTube thing. But hey, round of applause for you, Pretty Eyes, for dropping that first comment. Thank you. All right, now this video is going to be interesting because we got a few topics we're going to cover, a few videos, and then we're going to jump into the main story. But we're going to take a look. We got to go to Harvey, Illinois, to talk about somebody who we talked about on this channel before. The mayor of Harvey, who is apparently under intense pressure to resign amidst a lot of financial controversy. We talked about this gentleman before. Because this was all given Tiffany Henyard. It was all same general geographical area, same type of goofy behavior going on. After that, we're going to take a look at a law in DC that needs to be changed. Is one of the reasons why I don't have rental properties anymore, because they became too problematic. But we're going to talk about a man who tried to evict his ex-wife for 5 to 6 years, and he was just struggling doing so. And during that entire duration, she did not pay this dude any rent. It looks like they're finally about to make a change to that law, but it's dumb as hell, and that shouldn't have happened. Then we're going to pivot to Texas to talk about parents who were charged after their special needs son was found buried on their property. That story is actually pretty wild. And then finally, the last video we're going to talk about is, we're going to spin back to Chicago and talk about how the police there violated a business owner's right when he was in possession of a firearm lawfully, but it ended him up in jail anyway. That's probably going to be a big lawsuit. And finally, we're going to take a look at a federal level. We're going to look at some federal indictments that are going on with the Department of Justice. President Trump and his Department of Justice are active out here. They are doing a lot. We're going to take a look at three. We're going to talk about three indictments. We're going to take a look at one. We're going to look at or talk about the indictment of former FBI Director James Comey. We're going to talk about the indictment of Letitia James, the New York Attorney General. And finally, we're going to actually take a look at the indictment. It's about 20 some odd pages. We'll skip around, of John Bolton. One of those three people are really looking at doing some time in prison. And it's probably not going to be good. When we look at that indictment, you guys are going to be shocked at some of the foolishness that went on. So let's go ahead, jump into our first story. Let's just talk about the story. Let's play it, then we'll chop it up.
A group of community activists now calling for Harvey Mayor Christopher Clark to step down, citing years of alleged financial mismanagement and lack of transparency.
And this comes as Harvey employees face ongoing furloughs and the city struggles to meet payroll. Gabby Primus has more on the growing pressure at City Hall.
All right. When your city can't pay its employees and people are getting furloughed, that's automatically going to be a big problem. Y'all know how it go. I got to take some intermittent pauses because YouTube just not a fan of playing the video all the way through. But the very first point that I want to bring up is fiduciary duty and public trust. Elected officials, especially those in municipal offices, they often have an obligation to manage public funds responsibly. Mismanagement could trigger, we saw this before with Tiffany Henyard, even though they were bad, they were done poorly, internal audits, state oversight, and potentially criminal investigations for public corruption, violation of public corruption statutes.
69 furloughs to be exact. And of course, this is going to impact a lot of employees coming from multiple departments in the city of Harvey. Now, the choice is due to what officials describe as a severe financial emergency. As the city has announced, employees will be placed on temporary furlough while 98 essential workers will continue reporting. It's a long list of affected departments, some of which include public works, police, fire, water, finance and revenue, administrative staff, and the list goes on. Harvey Mayor Christopher Clark has said the city needs around $51 million a year to fund its operating expenses, but only takes in about $30 million. Clark said that when he took office in 2019, he inherited $164 million in debt.
We're about to raise their taxes. Anytime politicians are screaming, oh man, we can't do anything, they about to raise property taxes more likely than that. But typically with municipal law, financial oversight, municipalities have to comply with state laws for budgeting, reporting, and maintaining solvency. If payroll problems and, as we heard here, furloughs occur, oftentimes it's a symptom of a deeper budget issue or potentially mismanagement going on. This guy's been kicking people out of meetings and doing all sorts of crazy stuff for a while, so I'm not ashamed. At this point, we've seen before what happens in these suburbs of Chicago. There is not going to be any federal intervention. Even though I've seen a lot of videos and heard people compare this mayor's actions and activities to those of Tiffany Henyard, I'm not really sure. I don't know. I don't have all the facts, but just objectively, when I did some open source research, I don't know if his mismanagement or misuse, I say mismanagement of funds, were as egregious as Tiffany Henyard's. Still potentially bad, but it doesn't look to be as egregious to me just from the open source research that I could do.
The 35% loss of state revenue to fund pensions, and he says a, quote, gross lack of financial and personal records, end quote. Still, during a special city council meeting last week, residents were outspoken about the city's choice, but the mayor expressed the seriousness of the situation.
We are going to follow all the rules that we are supposed to follow, because we definitely don't want them filing any more unfair labor practices, because that's just going to cost us more money anyway. So we don't want them to do that. We're going to try to take care of as many people as we possibly can in this administration. But it would be irresponsible of us to think that we can continue to operate the city the way that we do.
Now, because
so the short and quick takeaway on this is pressure to resign and actually having some legal cause of action are two different things. The mayor is likely just going to argue, which anybody would, that it's external economic conditions such as recession, revenue shortfalls, lack of revenue from the collection of certain taxes that caused the financial distress. Of course, they're going to always assert that they acted in good faith, or that any mistakes that were made were administrative mistakes rather than criminal. And I think a big example of administrative mistakes rather than criminal were, I don't know if you all recall, many moons ago when we would do the videos on Tiffany Henyard, and they talked about her staying in these luxury hotels and all of these extravagant dinners and stuff. I said, I don't necessarily know if that's criminal, because they didn't have anything on the books that regulated how a politician was supposed to travel like they do at the federal government level. So just because something is off doesn't necessarily mean it's criminal. It could be an administrative thing. They are going to have to find some evidence of misappropriation, improper contracts, kickback violations, abusing the procedural rules of the municipality. If you find those things, criminal exposure will grow. But as it stands right now, this guy's going to probably sit into this seat until somebody decides to run against him. It is what it is. So, hey, as I say with anybody who's dealing with bad politicians, hopefully people turn out and vote and change it so they can get something different than what they have been getting. Because the south suburbs of Chicago, hey, y'all been going through it, and hopefully they can get a W, because they definitely need a W. All right, let's go ahead and take a look. We're gonna pivot to this next story. Why is everything different, bro? All right, we're gonna pivot to the District of Columbia, good old DC, and talk about why this guy couldn't get rid of his ex who stayed in his rental property for damn near 6 years and didn't pay any rent. And I will tell you, DC got some pretty terrible laws as it relates to landlord rights. I understand that there has to be some deference to the tenant, because some landlords are just trash and they'll try to evict you for a reason that isn't just or legally sufficient. But you got 5-6 years. That's actually kind of crazy. I don't even know if I believe that was the case. He might have just been scared because it was his ex or something. Let's check it out.
Tonight, landlord-tenant laws could change in the district as council weighs a vote on the Rental Act.
And it all comes as one man tells us it took him 5.
Yeah, that place is filthy, but it's not. Trust me, I had a rental where a tenant left, and I went in that place, and I felt like I was on an episode of what was that show Joe Rogan used to host, Fear Factor? That shit had creepy crawlies all over it. So this is actually not that terrible compared to shit I seen in rental properties I used to own.
5 years to evict someone from his own rental property, and they never paid a dime. Katie?
That's absolutely crazy. 5 years to evict somebody, and they never paid a dime. He should actually have some cause of action, not only against the tenant who didn't pay, but there should be some civil cause of action that he should be able to file against the municipality if the delays in that eviction process were the fault of the municipality, of the government organization institution.
Barlow has the exclusive story. Our chief legal correspondent live tonight from Northwest D.C. with the details.
It's difficult to evict someone in Washington, D.C., and that's by design. It's a policy choice made over many years. Today,
it is difficult. Eviction law, the process for eviction for non-payment of rent typically requires a formal notice, a court filing, a judgment, and enforcement. In D.C., rental protections and procedural hurdles can also prolong the process. Some of the dumb things that could prolong it, a backlog. So many damn people getting evicted because the economy bad, people furloughed. If there's a backlog, it could take forever for them to actually get to your shit to hear your case.
the D.C. Council is considering the Rental Act, which could change some of the dynamics between landlords and tenants if it gets passed. But this case appears to be a particularly egregious example of how the law currently works in the district.
It's been a nightmare. This is 6 years of my life.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely the worst eviction case we've ever had. I mean, 6 years to evict somebody is just crazy.
That's fucking crazy. 6 years to evict somebody is crazy. Like, shout out to this guy for actually following the law, because like after like if somebody's in your rental property, right? Real quick, let's change the view on this. If somebody's in your rental property and they aren't paying rent, you're going through the process and it's just a delay or a backlog, it's going to be hard for most people not to go over there with a baseball bat or go over there with their many cousins and raise hell. So credit to this guy. The entire time he wasn't getting rent, if he owes a mortgage on his property, this is money he's paying out of his pocket. So let's say $3,000, $4,000 a month he's paying so he doesn't lose his property because he still have a mortgage on it, all because his ex is just in there sitting around being ridiculous. Yeah, hey, I actually did a video. If y'all go back to some of the old content, I think it was called Selling in a Seller's Market, where I was selling one of my rental properties and I was just kind of memorializing and documenting the process, and I put pictures up. That shit was disgusting. That shit was so disgusting. I actually went down there with the intent Me and my brother went down there with the intent to do a lot of the work ourselves. Man, I got down there, I saw them damn roaches. I was like, hell no. Nah. Like, it was actually crazy. Trust me. Hey, I'm not a person growing up. I'm not unfamiliar with roaches. I've seen some roaches before in my day, but this was some Fear Factor shit. That shit was actually insane. Yeah, if he sold the property, I don't think they would have, but it would be during that 5-year period where she was just sitting in there, though. I don't think it would be hard to sell that during that period when she's in there, because buyers are going to want to do a walkthrough and all sorts of shit.
It was a relationship gone bad that turned into a nightmare for.
I think this was actually a little bit worse because it was a relationship gone bad. I'm gonna just be honest, like, I don't even know how you got into this. Generally, I don't know. Y'all let me know. I wouldn't rent. If he rented his property to his ex-girlfriend once she was his ex, I'm just be honest, I think that's fucking stupid. If he rented his property to his actual girlfriend, I think that actually might be stupider. I think they both are equally stupid. Like, generally, you don't want to combine relationships and business, because I think that's how you end up in these types of weird ass situations.
Crazy.
It was a relationship gone bad that turned into a nightmare for Doug Cleary. He was with a woman for 3 years. When they broke up, he tried to evict her from a house that he owned.
Okay, so he rented to her. He rented to her while they were in a relationship. Then it went bad, and she was like, "I'm not leaving."
They originally intended to share.
We just had, a normal boyfriend-girlfriend relationship until the trouble started in September 2019.
Doug's ex first tried to claim that they were married under common law. That tied the property up for
common law? They got common law in DC? I don't think they got. Do they got common law in DC?
years before a DC judge said that was never true.
And she stayed there from 2019 when the eviction started, through.
Bro, she hates you, bro. Like, most times, like, I ain't gonna say, like, a woman who's like, I don't know what their relationship was. I don't know what caused them to break up. But a lot of times when people break up, they just like, you know what? I want to be done with this shit. I want to just get my shit and leave. I don't even want to have to deal with you or your shit anymore. That's generally how it goes. The fact that she stayed there and tried to assert common law marriage and all these other crazy things, like, yo, she really wanted to fuck you over, guy. Typically, contract lease, the validity of a lease, the owner could show that the lease existed or they had a tenancy by consent. Typically, what will happen in landlord-tenant agreements, me and you enter into a lease agreement for 1 year. That lease expires and you don't renew that lease. Then you establish a month-to-month lease. We had a lease, we didn't renew it. I pay, you accept. We've been continuing doing this thing. So it normally establishes a month-to-month lease, and it can show that rents were due and unpaid. The tenant refused to vacate, making the case for unlawful detainer. Challenges faced by the landlord. We talked about this. Procedural delays, backlogs in housing court, tenant defense rights, possible protections if the property is a subsidized property, such as a low-income property, can make the eviction process hella slow. And the fact that it took 6 years is just absolute failure. And I don't blame most of that failure on the government side. That's actually crazy.
Almost the end of 2025. He has not paid a penny towards anything.
After he won the common law marriage fight, Doug returned to the landlord-tenant branch of D.C. Superior Court to try to get his house back. It took 5 years, in part because his ex filed multiple appeals, twice getting an emergency stay from the D.C. Court of Appeals, even though she disobeyed court orders to pay a bond and to put money in escrow.
That's fucking terrible as hell. I'm telling you right now, I'm going to be honest. If that was reversed and it was a guy who was doing all that shit, man, the court wouldn't have been granting all that shit. I don't think so. Maybe it's just me. Y'all let me know. I don't think the court would have been granting all that shit if the roles were reversed. and that was this guy doing all of this crazy shit.
The series of I think, very bizarre rulings from the courts or across the board.
Krieger is an experienced housing lawyer in the region. He says D.C. has made it too difficult to evict someone, even in a case less challenging than this one.
Also, so many just basic technical requirements that could be a problem for a landlord, even if the occupant is not difficult. Right? Like if you don't have GPS coordinates on the pictures showing that you posted the notice, the case gets dismissed.
Doug says she never paid rent, which should have been $4,000 a month over.
God damn, $4,000 a month over 5 years, and she ain't paid. Oh man, I'm suing the fuck. I'm hiring the best attorneys, and I'm coming after her civilly. The landlord in this case will have potential civil liability that he could potentially seek to recoup for unpaid rent, damages, or holdover damages. But recovery might be difficult if the tenant is judgment-proof, meaning the tenant has no assets or they just broke as hell. I'm going to be shocked if she broke. I just think she just wasn't paying his ass. I think she probably, I don't know the facts. They didn't go into detail, but I seriously doubt that she was just broke as fuck for 5 years and just living there. Like, I'm sure she probably had utilities in her name. She probably was buying groceries, just the basic shit. So I don't think that it was she's judgment proof. That, yeah, I don't think she's broke. I think she just decided, you know what? I'm not paying your ass. You broke up with me. Now you about to get this. Now you about to get this work. That's what I think. This case underscores how the law balances tenant protections with property owners' rights. Reforms are absolutely needed. Tenants do need some protections, but there's no way a homeowner should go 5, 6 fucking years without being able to collect $4,000 a month in rent. That's a lot of goddamn money. You're talking over $40,000 a year that this dude lost out on over a 5 to 6 year period because the courts was just some trash. Let me see. I gotta look up something real quick. See, I've never known that. She made a common law marriage argument. I never know. I can't relate. I don't know about common law, but DC does have common law. They recognize common law, which requires, oh yeah, she wasn't going to win this. Common law in DC requires an express agreement to be married and cohabitation. To be considered legally married under common law in DC, the couple must have an explicit present tense agreement to be husband and wife, and then they must live together without both elements common law. Why was this fucking hard to establish? This, I don't know how long specifically the court took to resolve that issue, but that shit should have been resolved in like 5 minutes. To be considered legally married under common law in DC, the couple must have an explicit present tense agreement to be husband and wife, and they must live together. They clearly didn't live together because he's trying to collect rents. But let's just not even look at that element. The couple must have an explicit present tense agreement. Him showing up to court saying we don't have that agreement, it means you can't prove that element. So I don't even know why the court was lollygagging around with this thing for that long. But hopefully that guy can sue. And this is, I mean, I've never been in a situation like this because I wouldn't have been that patient. but this is, I got out of the rental property business back in 2020, 2021. It's just not something I'd rather put my money in the stock market. I'd rather put it in a real estate investment trust and get monthly rents paid to me that way, as opposed to having to deal with roaches and shit and all sorts of goofy stuff. All right, let's take a pivot to Texas. We're going to talk a little bit about a story that happened in Burleson, Texas, related to a family and their 26-year-old special needs son. And we're going to talk about what is going on with this investigation as well. Let's dive in.
Two parents are in the Johnson County Jail accused of burying the body of their adult special needs son in their backyard. Police said the investigation started during a welfare check after they got a tip that the 26-year-old man might be dead.
Okay, now real quick, I don't know if you all recall, this was This was this during Trump's first term, or maybe after his first term? But when one of his ex-wives passed away, he had her buried on one of his properties. I think it was maybe a golf course or something like that. And I actually did a video because I was like, yo, I mean, there's a reason for it. And it's actually a preferential tax treatment that you can get. It was actually fucking genius. But I'm assuming all states, but in most states, they probably have strict rules against burying people in residential areas. That's something that's an absolute no-go. Donald Trump's golf course, he probably got tens, if not hundreds of acres on this damn golf course. He can corner off a portion of it to bury his ex-wife and have a ceremony, and no one will think anything of it. But in your residence is definitely a no-go. I'm sure most states have a law that prevent that. Some of the criminal charges that stems from this type of actions, you have tampering / fabricating physical evidence, concealing a human corpse. And I actually wouldn't be shocked if there's an actual investigation going on into the actual cause of death. They are currently only charged with evidence impairment rather than any type of murder or manslaughter. But I would not be surprised if the investigation is ongoing. Like typically, I'm just saying typically, okay? These are all allegations, charges. But typically, when Joe Citizen buries someone in their backyard, it's normally because some type of heinous activity occurred. Let's go ahead and jump back into the story.
Fox 4's Deion England joins us live with details. Deion.
Hi there, Clarice. More questions than answers. Burleson police here tell us that there was conflicting information about the young man's death. Now, the two people closest to him are facing charges.
The conflicting information definitely led us to believe that something was not as it should be.
A welfare check led to the disturbing backyard discovery on White Oak Lane in Burleson.
Jonathan Kidman's body was exhumed and transported to the Tarrant County Medical Examiner's office.
The 26.
I can't wait to see what that autopsy actually finds. Again, these are just charges, they're allegations, they're going to look for evidence, but I'm 100% sure now, especially listening to, I was 100% sure when I said it before he said that, but once he said they had some conflicting stories, they're definitely still looking into the investigation and the cause of death. So it's going to be interesting to see what the autopsy actually shows. I'm pretty sure they probably got a search warrant for the home. I'm probably sure they have forensic teams going up and down that entire house with all sorts of agents and looking at electronic devices and the whole nine.
6-year-old special needs son of renters December and Jonathan Mitchell was buried in a shallow grave. Concerns from some who know the family prompted police to inquire about Jonathan Kidman's whereabouts. Police say the couple acknowledged he had died. They say from there, the information was vague.
The first information was that she said that he was taken to Hughley Hospital and pronounced there, and we followed up with that, and that was not correct.
Okay, yeah. See, y'all know when I watch these videos, when people send them to me or they pop up and I'm like, yo, we're going to do a video of this, I try not to watch the video because I want y'all to get my initial reaction. But that actually just makes, I'll be honest, that makes no sense. 26-year-old special needs son, they clearly, okay, I don't know his entire life, but they have been providing some level of care for him. I don't know if someone else had custody of him, but that's uncommon as hell. Any parent, when their child dies, they aren't going to be like, oh man, let's go ahead and bury him in the backyard. That's actually crazy. They're going to call 911. They want to be there when the ambulance shows up. They're going to be doing chest compressions. They're going to be crying. All of this is giving mad sketch just to anybody who has a pair of eyes and some type of logical reasoning. Not saying that, hey, again, it's just not making sense. It's not, if it smells bad, it doesn't pass the smell test.
Do you remember seeing Jonathan?
Never saw him. That's the thing. Nobody in the neighborhood ever saw him. So,
but you knew he lived there?
No.
Neighbor Judy Harris says she and her husband were baffled by the heavy police presence in early October.
They've been there all night. We didn't realize it. And there's just one police car after another. There's 6 police cars and 2 medical examiner cars sitting out front.
Police say a shallow grave found in the backyard soon became the focal point. Investigators say it is unclear how long the special needs victim had been deceased and buried.
The mother, December Mitchell, and stepfather, Jonathan Mitchell, were arrested and charged with tampering and fabricating physical evidence with intent to impair human corpse, a second-degree felony.
Police say the victim lived with a condition that impaired his growth and contributed to other health issues. A statement from the family of Jonathan Kinman includes, "We were horrified to hear the news about our precious Jonathan. This is a living nightmare for the Kinman family. Please know that we are in full cooperation with law enforcement, and we will fight for every last ounce of truth and justice to come to light for the sake of our sweet boy."
Yeah, that's actually interesting. I would be interested, and I'm sure the cops are going to do a thorough investigation, but see if there were any instances of child protective services being involved with this family, anything like that. That's going to be paramount to the investigation. Again, the cause of death is not yet determined. Delays may affect the prosecution's ability to establish whether a homicide actually occurred. However, evidence of burial and misrepresentation can, like we talked about, support charges for concealment. Just for the charges, the tampering, they will likely contest that, oh, we didn't know that we were engaging in any wrongdoing. I mean, stupidity is not a defense for crimes. Causations, they want to know if the death was from natural causes and whether the burial was, of course, not authorized or reasonably handled. We got to wait to see what the forensics say. Like, you can tell how long an individual has been deceased by looking at the forensics, and also by looking at the decay of the body. The body is going to decay different. If it's buried, it's going to decay different. If it's in a refrigerated room, if it's in a hot ass trunk of a car, like D4 did, D4 Avid's Tesla trunk where they found that young lady. So the burden of proof for charges like tampering with evidence, the prosecution must prove that the defendants knowingly altered, destroyed, or concealed evidence with the intent to impair an investigation. And the burial itself is going to be a factor that they are going to look at as evidence. This is just a ridiculous case. This is one I'm gonna put a pin in because I want to see how the forensics comes back on this matter. But if I had to take a guess, it's just not passing the smell test. I don't know what the relationship was like, but it's not passing the smell test. I would not be shocked if there was some type of foul play here, because normally a mother isn't going to bury her child when he passes away, even if it's from natural causes. They're going to call 911 and go through all of the processes. All right, one story away before we get into the main story. This is a story of a miscarriage of justice. I'm glad that everything worked out for this brother, but this is a story of a brother, a small business owner who has his civil rights violated, and he absolutely did nothing wrong. This should not have happened. I told y'all before a channel about a mistake that happened in a court system to my father when he was like 70, and he had to go spend like a weekend in jail. It was crazy. It was crazy. And they put him in the orange jumpsuit over there with the guys who got the crazy records, because he had some crazy shit in his past. When mistakes cause people to have to sit in custody, heads should roll, in my fucking opinion. The punishment should be monetary sanction, and whoever made the mistake or fumbled the ball, you need to go sit your ass in custody for the exact amount of time that the person who was aggrieved had to sit in custody. So let's check this out. Hopefully this doesn't happen to anyone. It should have never happened. Let's check it out. He will be able to get it cured, but he should take some other legal cause of action.
It is your constitutional right to carry a gun in the state of Illinois if you have the proper licenses. But some black gun owners say their rights are being violated. CBS News Chicago investigator Dorothy Tucker uncovered.
I do agree. I would love to see a story like this if it happens to some white guy who's driving around Illinois. I have yet to find one. I've found other stories with similar things. I actually talked to someone from Chicago, and something like this actually happened to their sibling. Like, the shit is jacked up. I don't know. I think if you're a black person with a gun in Chicago, even if you got it lawfully, if all the T's aren't crossed, even if it's not your fault, it's an administrative fault on the government's behalf, they're going to do the wrong thing and violate your rights. It is. I think that's just what it's going to be.
Several cases where they were stopped by police and charged with felonies, despite having everything in order, leaving them to pick up the pieces of their lives.
We did something that's never been done before: watermelon cheesecake.
I don't even like watermelon. I'm like one of the 5 black people who probably don't like watermelon. But watermelon cheesecake actually sounds interesting. All right, let's get back to the story. I'm sorry, I got distracted.
We did something that's never been done before: watermelon cheesecake.
A cheesecake tasting in the south suburbs. Louis McWilliams' dream is to grow his business.
And it's going to blow you away.
I like it. All was good.
Oh my God, it's so good. I told you. This is like a Jolly Rancher.
Until this.
Right now, Mr.
I'm an entrepreneur. I have a company, a cheesecake company called Ann's Flavored Cheesecakes.
At the time of this interview, Louis faced a felony charge.
This has been very traumatic for me. I feel like my rights was violated.
His Second Amendment rights. Louis is an avid gun owner.
Just got me the AR top, one in the middle.
In April, Louis was pulled over on the south side, West 79th Street. He had a missing front plate.
All right. Just as a general rule, stuff like that, please try to avoid that stuff. If you got a missing plate or something like that, I know sometimes the shit happens, people steal shit, and you just got to write a cardboard plate stolen to get where you need to go. But if you are doing that, and this guy didn't do anything wrong, I mean, a missing plate is the reason that a cop's going to fucking pull you over. But like, it's just going to draw attention to you. And even when you're doing something legally like this guy, it's going to get over scrutinized, especially because he's a black guy. Just, it is what it is. I haven't seen any of these stories happening to random white guys in Illinois.
Yes, sir. How you doing, boss? Good, good.
The first thing he did, tell the officers he had a gun.
Okay, where's your firearm? On my side.
Some states are jurisdictions where you have to disclose that you have a firearm, and failure to disclose that is a crime in and of itself. Other states, you don't have to disclose if you have a firearm or if you're in a state where you have to disclose, you should always disclose, because some states are tying concealed carry permits to driver's license records. So when they pull you over, they see your registration, they can see your driver's license and easily identify that you have a concealed carry permit. And if you don't say, hey, I have a concealed carry, a gun on me right now, it could be a potential issue.
Okay, you got your concealed carry license?
According to state law, in order to carry a legal gun in your car, you need a firearms license, better known as a FOID card, and a concealed and carry license, commonly called a CCL. This is Lewis's card, and it's valid. That's what he handed the officers.
He looks at him. He said, okay, cool, this is perfect.
Only it wasn't.
Concealed carry, it didn't pop up. Oh.
It didn't pop up on Leeds, the database operated by the Illinois State Police. Police recommended Louis be charged with 2 felonies.
This is the stupidest shit that I've ever seen in my life. And I know when I explained this to somebody, they said people can fabricate and falsify those cards. That's that's completely true. But let's just think of this from a common sense standpoint. If I'm a police officer and I pull you over, before I get out of the car, his front plate was missing. So when they pulled him over, they were clearly behind him. Nobody cop pull you over from the damn front of the vehicle. So they were clearly behind him. They clearly ran his plates. Normally, cops are running your plates before they even come up. So when they run the plates, they know who the vehicle is registered to, know if the registration is good. They know if the person the vehicle is registered to has a valid driver's license or not. They know all of that shit. So when they pulled him over, he was missing a plate, but we don't hear anything about having an invalid license. We don't hear anything about his registration or tags being expired. So the car's his, is registered to him. He gives him a license plate. He gives him the driver's license that matches with the registration of the car. He gives him concealed carry, a CCW card for concealed carry, then the FOID card that he needs to actually own the firearm. All of those have the same name, address, same number, all the same fucking information on them. But when they run it in the system, they don't find his concealed carry in the system. At that point, you got to let that dude walk. There's nothing that you can do. The best case scenario is, okay, we're going to give you a warning. You need to get your license plate in the front squared away. Write down you got all of his information, his driver's license, his address, his registration, it has his address on it, his concealed carry card, his FOID card, all of the numbers associated with those cards. You got all that information. You know where the fuck he is at. That's all you need. Like, okay, well, we're going to let you go because you provided us with everything. And it doesn't appear to be a bogus ass card. The authenticity of this card isn't in question. You got to let that man go. So shame on these cops for violating this dude's rights. They could have took all his information down, came back later and figured out if his card was valid or not. But if someone physically hands you the shit and it passes the authenticity check, the cops have an obligation to take it for what it is. There was nothing with this card that made them jump out and say, oh, this card is bullshit.
Right now, this is good because you can't verify if it's still good.
And look here, prosecutors approved the charges.
He never should have been charged.
Irv Miller is a former prosecutor, once in charge of reviewing police cases.
Terrible.
He showed them a valid CCL card. Not only did they see it, they actually took possession of it and inventoried it.
I haven't got the
They took his damn card and inventoried it. Like this is actually insane. Shame on the prosecutors and shame on the officers involved in this.
It's right there in CPD's inventory sheet. So why was Lewis arrested? That's a question we wanted to ask Superintendent Larry Snelling, but he declined an interview.
So we reached out to state police because anytime an officer pulls over a driver who has a gun, the first thing they do is check the state's database to see if that driver has a valid FOID and CCL.
Oh, okay.
So here's the question we asked the state. If a driver like Lewis actually hands the police a valid CCL, but the officers don't see the information in the state's database, what should they do? The state replied, the officers should not take any law enforcement action as it relates to a potential FOID CCL violation. That's what Lewis expected.
That's common sense. Shame on the officers and the prosecutors here, and this dude even having to go through this and be processed.
And what he was told later as he stood in a jail cell.
This comes back clean.
Yeah, then they just let you go, apologize, and let you go about your day.
That's not what happened. Lewis spent 24 traumatic hours behind bars.
It was just deplorable. There were roaches falling from the ceiling.
All of this because of illegal everything.
Yeah, I can't tell you why.
I need somebody to tell me, man.
Worse than the jail conditions, a missed business opportunity.
That day, I had a meeting. Could not do the meeting that day because I was arrested. By losing that, I might have lost the franchise.
Lewis also lost time, lots of it. He was in and out of court fighting to get the charges dismissed and his impounded car returned.
I know this is a system, so just hoping for the best results.
It wasn't until mid-June, 3 months after he was stopped, that the case was finally dismissed.
I'm very excited for him, but this is not the end.
All right, this is ridiculous. I actually don't even want to watch this anymore because, yo, shout out to that dude. I hope he gets an attorney and gets everything resolved. Losing that business opportunity is a big-ass economic impact. There is a cause of action for that. Some places call it tortious interference with a contract. He should have some recourse. His issue is going to have to be determine he needs a method to determine the potential loss of that economic opportunity. Even though he got the charges dismissed, he still is going to have to go through the process of getting it expunged from his record. So when they look it up in his background check, it doesn't even come up. So it's just a travesty. That shit shouldn't have happened. And apparently it looks like it's only something that's happening to like black folks who are law-abiding gun carriers, and the cops just stupid. So hopefully they get their shit together. If not, a couple of lawsuits where the city has to pay over millions of dollars normally can cure those types of dumbass behaviors. Y'all let me know what y'all think about that story. Now, let's go ahead, jump into our main topic story for the day. We are going to talk about some indictments. Now, we're going to talk about the first two because y'all remember the Sesame Street song where they had three things, and they'd be like, one of these kids just doesn't belong. Okay, of these three, one person is probably potentially have a high likelihood of being screwed and actually having to go in prison. So let's talk about it. The first matter or indictment we're going to talk about is former FBI Director James Comey. He was indicted for alleged false statements to Congress and obstruction related to leaks within the FBI. Now, this is interesting because, hey, I've worked on a lot of federal cases regarding false statements and obstruction of justice. A shitload of them, actually, probably more than I wanted to. But the timeline on this case is key testimony before Congress that occurred. The indictment came with the claims that Comey willfully and knowingly made false statements and obstructed a congressional proceeding. The former FBI Deputy Director Andrew McCabe is referenced in the indictment because he said that Comey had knowledge of leaks that were going on in the FBI and actually authorized it. Well, what is the first issue with this? Well, Andrew McCabe has credibility issues. He was the former number 2 at the FBI. He has credibility issues. There's an Inspector General report related to this matter that says Andrew McCabe gave inconsistent statements and testimony. So just from an evidence standpoint, Comey testified that I've never authorized leaks of FBI information. Andrew McCabe said, hey, Comey authorized these leaks, but there's an Inspector General report out there that's saying Andrew McCabe, who is probably going to be your witness, is not credible. This case sounds like a shit show to me. I think just from the element standpoint, I think they're going to have a tough time proving that, one, his statement was false. I think his attorneys are going to attack the credibility of Andrew McCabe. I don't think they can prove that Comey knowingly and willfully made a false statement. And I think they're also going to have a problem with proving that even if he made a false statement, did it obstruct the congressional proceeding? Did it bring that congressional proceeding to a abrupt halt so that it couldn't move forward? I don't think any of those things are going to be satisfied. Now, that's just related to the elements of what he's being charged with. The prosecution is building the case based largely on an inference that McCabe said he authorized the leaks. The defense argument, the indictment lacks detailed identification of which leaks. you made a false statement, but you can't identify specifically what the statement is. Which authorized person or direct evidence of Comey's authorization, making it a thin indictment. The credibility of McCabe, we talked about, is up for attack. He was under an internal investigation, and his termination by the FBI also raises questions on can they take the truthfulness of what Andrew McCabe is saying about James Comey. And proven materially false under the statute is difficult when statements are ambiguous and the fact pattern is just kind of goofy and uncertain. So I don't think they're going to have just the evidence to be able to get a conviction. In addition, his team is going to challenge that the U.S. attorney who actually brought this case is not the proper person to bring this case because her appointment as a U.S. attorney is invalid. What the hell does that mean? Well, long story short, this case and the case against Letitia James are interesting because none of the attorneys wanted to take the case. None of the career attorneys, that's like guys like me and guys who just are attorneys with the feds or the government or the prosecutor's office, and they normally do this work. Normally, those are the guys who are taking these cases and who are the lead attorney on these cases. Everybody was like, I don't want this shit. Nobody wanted the case. The U.S. attorney for the Eastern District of Virginia was subsequently ousted. He was appointed by President Trump. He was ousted. They brought in a new U.S. attorney, and now this U.S. attorney could not find any career prosecutors to bring the case. She had to bring and do the indictment herself. That didn't even go off good because apparently she's never done an indictment before. That was her first one. And the reason that Comey's team is going to argue she doesn't have the authority to bring the case is because the president can appoint someone to serve as a U.S. attorney in a certain area for a certain amount of time. After that time, the replacement has to be appointed by the courts. And she was appointed by President Trump. So that's going to be one challenge that they're going to have. I don't know how successful it is. I think it's kind of weak. But the other challenge that's probably a little bit better is malicious prosecution, a vindictive prosecution. There's been ample conversations, video on record of President Trump specifically talking about going after James Comey, Letitia James, Adam Schiff. There was a leaked message that President Trump apparently thought was going to be a direct message, but he actually posted it to everybody on Truth Social, to Pam Bondi. It all kind of supports that this is a vindictive, potentially malicious prosecution. So far as James Comey go, I don't think it's actually going to go anywhere. I'd be shocked if anything comes about this one. So let's put James Comey over right here in this category of James Comey probably not going to have to worry about anything. Now let's take a pivot to Letitia James. Now this is actually interesting because as I had cases on false statements, I actually used to work with the Treasury in some regard, and I worked a lot of mortgage fraud cases. So I know about mortgage fraud. Letitia James, the New York Attorney General, she was indicted for alleged bank fraud and false statements. Man, I had probably hundreds of those cases. To a financial institution for allegedly misrepresenting the occupancy status of a property, a secondary residence versus a rental property, to obtain a loan, then apparently used the property differently. The property was purchased in 2020. Disclosures and loan applications from 2020 to 2023. The indictment alleges false statements and frauds. Now, typically, the total loss amount here, I think, is like $17,000 to $18,000. Those cases normally would not get a sniff from a U.S. attorney's office because the dollar amount is so low, unless it's a politician or political figure involved, because they have fraud, but also in the fraud unit is public corruption. So fraud and public corruption. So even though I don't think this is a strong case, and I'll tell you why, yes, the dollar amount is low. Nobody would probably want to take it otherwise if it was anyone else. But because as a politician, the public corruption unit would potentially look at it with maybe a harder look because a politician is involved. Like the James Comey indictment, no career prosecutor wanted to take this case. This case was taken by the newly appointed attorney, a U.S. attorney for the Eastern District of Virginia. I think this was the second grand jury indictment that she actually did. So it has those same issues where the fact that no career prosecutors wanted to take the case goes to show that they believe the case not to be a strong case. In U.S. Attorney's Office, they normally like to have things gift wrapped. I refer cases to them. They want it wrapped up in a little bow with all of the facts. If it's like 50-50, they like, nah, we don't really want to rock with it like that. So why is this case not a strong case? Okay, in a case for a false statement, a bank fraud, the false representation has to be material. What does material mean? Well, material means this. Let's say I'm filling out a loan application to buy a house. And on that loan application, I make $80,000 a year, right? I make $80,000 a year. I got a 750 credit score. I make $80,000 a year. But on my loan application, I put that I make $95,000 a year. Like, let me just put a little extra sauce on it so I can make sure my debt to income ratio, I put $95,000 a year. And they approved that loan. If someone said, yo, let's prosecute Marcus for fraud, false statements, he fraudulently did this. The question is going to be asked, was that misrepresentation material? What that means is, even though I put 95 and I really made 80, had I not put 95 and I put 80, my actual salary, would you still have approved the loan? If the answer is yes, we still would have approved it. That false statement that I made isn't material. It would have to be a statement that the false nature of that statement, had we known it was false at the time you made it, we would not have approved this mortgage for you and you would not have got it. I don't think that they can prove that. I'm thinking her money was right. I'm thinking the credit score was right. I don't think that they could prove that the false statements was necessarily material. The defense is going to argue that the misrepresentation was either innocent or clerical or not material. Intent to rent versus occupy is fact intensive and is going to be contested. The gain, again, was relatively small, $18,933. And again, career prosecutors didn't want to touch the case. That is a big deal. Weaknesses, defense arguments, intent is the key. Without clear intent to defraud, bank fraud charges are very difficult. The defense will emphasize that the property may legitimately have been used in a way consistent with her disclosures. Discrepancy in disclosures, such as investment versus residence, modest alleged gain, political context because the AG was high profile. Given the facts, the proof, the fact that I don't think the false statement was material, the fact that intent is going to be difficult to prove, we can put Tish James over in the Comey category where I don't necessarily think these are viable cases. Plus, she also has that same argument of malicious, vindictive prosecution that we talked about. Now, let's talk about John Bolton, the former National Security Advisor. Who the hell is the National Security Advisor? Just from the title, we know that this person has to have a top secret clearance and is going to be privy to some real legit shit that's going on out here in the world. So that's actually very key and very important. I want to pull this indictment up. We're going to go through it real quick, but there's some interesting information in here, and he did some dumb ass stuff. And as soon as we cover this indictment, you're going to see why his matter is different from the other two matters we talked about. This is brought in the U.S. District Court in the District of Maryland. where he's a resident. He resides in Maryland. In 2018 to 2019, he was a National Security Affairs. Commonly known as a National Security Advisor. Let's scroll down. All right, so right here. Now, a key to note is, unlike the previous two, this investigation actually started under the Biden administration, and career prosecutors actually brought this case. It wasn't, Trump didn't have to find a U.S. attorney who wanted to do it. Career prosecutors was like, yeah, we'll take this because the facts support us taking it. Bolton was the National Security Advisor to the president between April of 2018 and September 2019. He advises the president on all extended threats to the United States and other issues related to national security, including foreign relations, intelligence activities, and decisions regarding the use of military force. Bolton has access to some of the U.S. government's most sensitive and closely guarded national security secrets. In order to obtain a U.S. security clearance that granted him access to the information, Bolton signed numerous non-disclosure agreements that acknowledge, among other things, unauthorized disclosures of classified information could cause damage and irreparable injury to the United States, that he would never divulge classified information without prior written authorization from the relevant government agency, and that he would never divulge anything he knew to be sensitive to anyone who is not authorized to receive it without prior written authorization, and that he understood that the unauthorized disclosure of national security information may constitute violations of U.S. criminal laws. If you've been a federal government employee with a clearance, you know that. Like even when you stop working there, the shit you learned on that job is information obtained from that job, and you have no right to disclose it. People who work at law enforcement agencies like FBI and DEA, and they work all these juicy cases with cartels, when they start working there, when they retire, they just can't run over to Netflix and sign some agreement to spill all the beans. They have to get a production agreement. It has to be approved. The agency has to approve it. They have to know what specifically they want to look at. It's all of these hurdles that people have to go through. All right, as National Security Advisor, Bolton directed the supervised work of the staff on behalf of the president. Bolton had access to and was responsible for safeguarding most sensitive national defense information, including classified information. Due to Bolton's need to have access to national defense information and classified information while serving as the NSA National Security Advisor, the U.S. government installed an accredited sensitive compartmented information facilities called the SCIF. Going to a SCIF, you got to pretty much go in there butt naked. You can't have no phone, no watch. If you're going into a SCIF to get information, to read some shit, trust me, you go into a SCIF, no smartwatch, no glasses. You just pretty much in there assed out. You ain't naked, but they're going to make sure you don't go in there with anything because the things that are in the SCIF are super sensitive. They installed the SCIF within his home located in Maryland. The SCIF was approved for processing and closed storage of classified information, including information classified at the top secret level. Bolton's term as National Security Advisor ended on September 2019. The SCIF in Bolton home was decertified by the U.S. government on October 16, 2019, and from that date through the present, no location within Bolton home was approved for lawful storage of classified information. At no point, including the point when Bolton had an accredited SCIF in his home, was Bolton authorized to store, transmit classified information or unclassified systems such as an AOL email, Google email, or non-governmental commercial messaging application. We already see where this is going. This is about to get done as soon as you see AOL and Google. Bolton learned national defense and classified information, CIA, U.S. military, foreign government. Bolton also had a variety of secure telecommunication systems that he could use to discuss and communicate classified information. Bolton had access to the National Security Advisor to classify spaces in the White House, Eisenhower's executive office, and other locations in D.C. From April 2018 through August of 2025, Bolton abused his position by sharing more than 1,000 pages of information about his day-to-day activities as National Security Advisor, including information related to national defense, which was classified to the top secret level with two unauthorized individuals, namely Individual 1 and Individual 2. Individual 1 and Individual 2 have been identified as Bolton's spouse and his daughter, which is absolutely stupid. Bolton also unlawfully retained documents, writings, and notes related to the national defense, including information classified at the top secret level. Individual 1, whose identity is known to the grand jury, was related to Bolton, resided in Maryland, never had a security clearance, and was not authorized to access, receive, or maintain classified information that Bolton shared. Individual 2, identity known to the grand jury, was related to Bolton. How you gonna give some shit you ain't supposed to give to your wife and your daughter, bro? That's stupid. All for the rights to write a book, because I think he was one of the first people to write a book after he left the Trump administration during President Trump's first term. Individual 2 never had a security clearance, wasn't authorized to be privy to any of Bolton's work. From April 2018 through September 2019, on a regular basis, Bolton sent diary-like entries to Individual 1 and 2 that contained classified top secret information. He wrote many of these diary-like entries, transcribing his notes from his daily activities in word processing documents, which he then sent electronically to Individual 1 and 2 through commercial non-government messaging systems, AOL and Google. At no point did Bolton have authorized to store, transmit, or send this information to Individual 1 or 2, nor did at any time Individuals 1 or 2 have the right to this information. Okay. At an unknown time in 2025, many of his diary-like entries from Bolton's National Security Advisor diary, including entries, contained information related to top secret clearance that were printed and stored in Bolton's personal residence in Montgomery County. Digital copies of some of the entries contain national defense information. After Bolton's time as National Security Advisor came to an end, Bolton's personal residence was not authorized to hold this information. Bolton's skiff in his home was declassified. Okay, now this is where it gets interesting. We're going to skip to paragraph 14 because this is where it gets interesting. And this is fucking a big deal because this dude actually could have got like people killed with his stupidity. I'm going to just be honest. At some point between when Bolton left government in service in September 2019 and July 2021, a cyber actor believed to be associated with Iran hacked Bolton's personal email accounts and gained unauthorized access to classified and national defense information in that account. His personal emails that he sent all of this unauthorized shit to his daughter and wife on got hacked. And now Iran had access to all of this top secret information because he sent it through an unauthorized means. Completely fucking unacceptable. That could lead to getting soldiers killed and having terrible effects. Like, that's actually terrible. If working for federal law enforcement agencies throughout my career, being in the military, this is ridiculous. All right, so Iran hacked his personal email account, and they saw, wait, this dude is sending top secret shit from his AOL and Gmail to somebody else. Bolton had previously emailed Individuals 1 and 2 while he was a National Security Advisor. A representative for Bolton notified the U.S. government of the hack in 2021, but did not tell the U.S. government that the account contained top secret information that Bolton had placed in his email accounts and sent them during his time as National Security Advisor. So to me, that shows an intent to be deceitful. You knew what you were doing was wrong because you didn't come out and say that initially. All right. Classified information. We know it was classified. I'm looking at some of the information that they sent. This is terrible. All right, so this second part, when we pick up on paragraph 27, this is talking about his actual handwritten notes that he used. Bolton often referenced these notes as his diary and sent them to individuals 1 and 2 over his non-governmental email. The information contained notes including detailed information that he learned from senior meetings of U.S. government officials. This is ridiculous. Hold on, let me see. For example, a description of classified information related to a foreign government's activity might begin with an intel briefer said. On one description of classified information learned on a military briefing might begin with while in situation room. I learned that the notes Bolton sent individuals 1 and 2 often began with the words individual 1 and 2 start here. In at least one communication, Bolton also referenced to individual 1 and 2 as his editors. He did all this stupid shit for his book because he wanted to memorialize his time as national security advisor. So let me break down the quick take of what happened. Bolton had all this top secret information. He wanted to write a book and get a book deal. So he was sending top secret information in his personal email address to his wife and to his daughter. How did the United States find out about this? Well, at some point, Bolton's personal email got hacked by Iran, and Iran said, whoa, wait, this is top secret information that this doofus is sending. How did we find out? Bolton reported that his personal email was hacked, but didn't disclose that he had conveyed top secret information from his personal email address. Now, unbeknownst to Iran, the United States was actually aware that Iran had hacked Bolton's email. This is interesting because remember, this investigation into Bolton started during the Biden administration. Why did the Biden administration sit on it? Why didn't they do anything with it? Because Iran hacks Bolton emails and they got top secret information. The United States is hacked into Iran, so we know that they're looking at Bolton's information. The Biden administration didn't want to move on it because if they would have moved on Bolton, then Iran would have had notice that, hey, how the fuck do they know Bolton disclosed shit to Iran? Oh shit, the only way they can find out because they're looking at our stuff. So the Biden camp said, yo, we don't want to blow Bolton up because if we indict Bolton, Iran is now going to know that we are conducting surveillance on them. So that's why the Biden Justice Department didn't do anything with it. The Trump Justice Department was like, you know what? Fuck it. I don't care what they know. We're gonna move forward with it. But this is actually a viable claim. I think Bolton is 75, 77. Even if he get 5 years in custody, like that could be a life sentence for him if he got to do 5 years in custody. This does not look good. I think that there's sufficient evidence there. I don't know. I think this is going to be tough for Bolton to get from underneath. I think he's probably going to be up shit's creek without a paddle. One thing that they could have done, though, I don't know why they didn't do it. If Bolton sent these emails from his personal email with top secret shit, Iran hacks Bolton's personal emails. In the United States, we're aware that Iran hacked Bolton's email, but Iran doesn't know that we know that they hacked his email. I'm surprised that they didn't use Bolton to send misinformation to Iran. Like, okay, since we know you're looking at his emails, let's get him to send some misinformation that may be beneficial to us in some other national security capacity. I think the big takeaway from these indictments is that Comey and Letitia James indictments are headline grabbing, but the legal viability is kind of weak. The facts are ambiguous, challenges proven intent, credibility issues of Andrew McCabe. It all poses issues for those cases. The Bolton case, on the other hand, is the one that stands out in terms of prosecutorial viability. It's stronger. It's sufficient facts there. Is a clear pathway to conviction. From weakest to strongest, James Comey is probably the least likely to have any legal repercussions. No, Letitia James is probably the lowest, then Comey, then Bolton. I don't think anything is going to come from the James Comey indictment. I could be wrong, but I don't think those are just viable. I think it's too many issues. Y'all let me know what y'all think in the comments about those three indictments or any other story we talked about. Do you all think former National Security Advisor John Bolton is screwed? I think he is. And I'm gonna be honest, I think what he did was absolutely terrible. People, I guess, leave office and have sensitive information all the time. They had files that President Trump did. Biden had some that he had to turn over or something like that. Like, it happens all the time. But Bolton does it, and then he's hacked by the damn Iran government. Like, that actually could have led to a lot of people dying, a lot of U.S. infrastructures being at risk. I think he's up shit's creek. I'm guessing he's going to probably either get a conviction or plead guilty to some lesser offense where they take some of the counts away or something to that effect. Y'all let me know what y'all think in the comments. As always, I appreciate y'all for tuning in. Y'all take care. Be blessed. Have a good evening. And I may or may not holler at y'all on Friday because I'm getting some dental work done tomorrow. So hopefully I'm not here looking like Bubba Gump and we can dive into something. Y'all have a good one. Be safe. Be blessed. Peace.